Broadcasting from the studio at the Levan Center of Innovation at Nova Southeastern University, welcome to Levan Center Live, featuring rockstar entrepreneurs, innovators, and those that foster the Florida business ecosystem.
Hi, and welcome back to Levan Center Live. This is the podcast that talks about entrepreneurship, innovation, all things Florida business ecosystem. I'm Jim Ryan here at the Levan Center of Innovation. Of course, I'm joined by my good friend, good guy, Kelly Shanley, who's interim director of the Levan Center. And good morning, Kelly. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing great, Jim.
Well, we've got a terrific podcast today. An old friend, but not that old. I've known her for almost a decade now, which means I met her about at the age of 9 years. And she's been a terrific supporter of the ecosystem herself, both in academia, entrepreneurship, innovation, tech, and so many other areas helping support this ecosystem. Worked with her at the venture mentoring team in supporting mentorship here in Florida. And I'd like to welcome Terri-Ann Brown, who is director for Miami Tech Works. And Terri, it's great to have you with us today.
Thank you, Jim. Over a decade.
I know. I imagine that.
Yeah,
so it's been
time.
terrific. And it's seeing you blossom in your career and doing so many things. So we kind of bifurcate the podcast a little bit, talk about your background briefly, and then really interested in some of the dynamic work that you're doing in Miami, specifically with Miami Tech Works, your role there, and then talk about sort of as you're sort of a steward now of the ecosystem itself, being involved in so many areas. So I'd like to talk to you about that too, what you've seen, and where do you think the business, the organizations, the innovation is coming from in the future. So with that said, why don't you share with us a little bit about your background, where'd you go to school, and so forth?
Yeah, sure. So I'm originally from Jamaica, but grew up in the Northeast. And so I spent my college years in Boston. Actually went to Boston College. And originally, I'm a technologist at heart. My dad bought me my first computer, which I'm going to age myself a little bit, but it was a Commodore 64.
Fantastic. I remember that.
Yeah. So my first coding language was BASIC.
Yeah.
And then quickly in high school, I maxed out on my STEM classes. So I had a teacher say, hey, go to the community college and start taking some C++ classes. So at that time, dual enrollment was not a thing, but I was a junior, senior in high school sitting in on C++ and just loving life. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go to college and continue to be a software developer. So I got to college, took my first C++ class as a freshman and was like, whoa, this is really overwhelming. Probably should have started off a little slower. And then reframed or pivoted a little bit. I guess that was my first pivot. But just never really left technology behind, even though I never graduated as a software engineer. I instead graduated with communications, marketing, but I still had technology in my back pocket. I took some HTML, CSS, Java classes, and then I eventually found myself here in South Florida in the field of HR. But like I said, never left technology behind. I was the HR person that hated paper. And so I was always in the IT office saying, hey, I need to create some workflows that always involve digital transformation. So I created internal systems where my managers, if they needed to do anything related to an HR process, I built an online platform for them to be able to do that. So always incorporated technology in everything that I did. And then, as life happens, moved companies, always created opportunities to incorporate more technology. And then I don't know if you remember Mason Jackson.
Of course I do.
Yeah. So I think it was back in 2014, I got a call from, I don't know if it was Career Source, Broward.
What it was then, I don't know.
But it said
Workforce.
There's an opportunity for people with bachelor's degrees that are interested in entrepreneurship to do this thing called Startup Quest. Do you remember
I remember
Startup
Startup Quest,
Yeah,
I was active in that group. Wonderful.
Were you? Awesome. And that's actually where I met Bob, I think the first time. And so Startup Quest gave you the opportunity to work with IP that was being developed in colleges and universities. And in a simulation, you worked on a project team and you were to commercialize that IP from idea to launch. Actually, that's where I met Terry also, Terry Bentley. And so we had to come up with the commercialization strategy, write the business plan, come up with a pitch, and just see if this was technically IP that could eventually be launched.
And there wasn't much going on at that time.
No.
So this was, early foundations for entrepreneurship here in South Florida.
Absolutely. I would say very, very early. At that time, I don't even think anybody was talking about things like co-working space
Right.
or incubators or anything like that. What I've seen in South Florida is that we've had, these waves of momentum when it comes to the entrepreneurial ecosystem. And I would say that first wave in 2014, 2015 there was so much activity happening. But anyway, so yeah, we did Startup Quest. I met great people, really got into the idea of mentorship to help people understand how to start companies, how to grow these really quick technology companies, especially if they have an idea. And from there, I met these 3 guys as a part of the Startup Quest that said, hey, we're going to launch this thing called the Founder Institute. It was Mark Volchek, Rodolfo Novarini, and Michelle Triana. And they said, would you like to come and help be an ambassador, help us set up this program, help us figure out how do we launch it here in Florida? And Founder Institute is based off of a Silicon Valley program. And we launched it in the summer of 2015, I want to say. And we just helped tech founders go from idea stage to launch stage. And I did about 3 cohorts of that. Once again, met awesome mentors and people and really got to understand what it meant to have strong mentors leading companies. And from there, I also met my co-founder, who we eventually co-founded a dental technology
I remember
company.
that. And also I was a mentor and judge with Founders Institute. So you and I had carried a baton there into your venture with
Apolonics.
Apolonics, that's right.
Yeah. So I dipped my toe into the entrepreneurial world also, did a lot of pitch competitions, even made it to when TechCrunch came down and asked for startups to do a 1-minute pitch. My startup was selected to do that 1-minute pitch. So it was really exciting to be recognized as an up-and-coming startup with TechCrunch. And I think similar to a lot of startup journeys, we had a great idea. We had good early adoption. We raised, some family and friend rounds. We even went to one of the largest dental conventions in Colorado, had some good traction, but we just couldn't execute and get the customer acquisition that we wanted to. So had to pivot again. But then other opportunities presented itself through the venture mentoring team. Working with startups again, and then partnering with one of the largest Fortune 100 companies that we have here, which was Office Depot. Post-COVID, they wanted to maximize their presence in the startup small business ecosystem, and so they launched a project called Elevate Together. And the purpose of Elevate Together was to ensure that small businesses post-COVID could have really sustainable funding as well as mentorship to guide those small businesses. And so my role as the Director of Community Partnerships with the Venture Mentoring team was to select the businesses working with the National Urban League and the U.S. Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. We chose small businesses to give micro grants, $5,000, $10,000, but more importantly, that came with business mentorship. So now you had businesses that were like mom and pop or the Me Too businesses in communities like Philadelphia, Atlanta, Detroit. We even went to Phoenix, Arizona, and they might have been started out of your home. I remember one gentleman that was a hot sauce company. Another lady made pound cakes that she originally started selling in her church, but they were chosen because these entrepreneurs had a desire to grow, scale, and they had shown through continued education and through continued technical assistance that they wanted to grow. And so we probably did about 150 small businesses that we interacted with, but more importantly, through the venture mentoring team, we created a new certification program that allowed mentors to understand the needs of small businesses and to train those mentors to align with small business owners, which I thought was really impactful.
It
I don't
was.
know, did you go through that?
I
training?
did, yeah.
Yeah.
Very impactful.
So I thought that was great too. I was happy to create that program. And then after 2 years, Office Depot really wanted to expand that program. And so the mentorship component shifted. And then I was called by someone that says, hey, Miami or South Florida received $10 million from the Economic Development Administration. The purpose of this funding is to help identify career pathways in technology and to really get critical job data from employers. Would you be interested in leading this grant opportunity? And I said, yeah, sure, I'll take a look at it. And then a month after leaving VMT, I started Miami Tech Works.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm just going to make an observation here, like listening to the two of you talk about how the ecosystem has sort of been built and grown over time down here. I thought of the historical value of these podcasts. Like, I feel I'm glad we're sort of capturing how it started, how it grew with a lot of these interviews. It's just interesting to hear kind of those foundational moments in the entrepreneurial ecosystem.
I would add one thing that I think was a critical moment in South Florida. It was when we were pitching for the Amazon HQ headquarters.
Okay.
Do you remember that?
I remember that,
moment?
yes. Yep. And the Greater Fort Lauderdale Alliance was involved with that. Yep.
But not only that, it was a whole tri-county
Right. You're right.
proposal together.
Rare.
And it was rare. So it really broke the barriers down that, listen, this is a win for everybody.
point.
And we needed to do
Because it was a
regional.
massive opportunity. Because it had failed in New York, and it was an opportunity that Florida was a hand raiser there, and it would have obviously been a magnificent opportunity for the counties.
Yes. And was that 2016, 2017?
Something like
Around
that,
right?
Yeah. So I would say that, to me, was a pivotal moment. And I remember being invited down to Miami. At the time, it was Venture City. It was a incubator program, and they opened up their space and they said, hey, we're going to do a SWOT analysis. So we got all these ecosystem folks together that had been involved in some capacity, whether it was government, education, entrepreneurship. And I think we were there for probably like 4 or 5 hours one night. Lots of people in the room doing a SWOT analysis of what do we need to consider in this proposal that puts us at the top for this Amazon HQ2. And even if we didn't get it, by collaborating and really doing that SWOT analysis, we realized, hey, what can we work on together and where are we lacking in terms of infrastructure? And I think we learned so much from that. And I think that's what helped us when it came to getting this EDA $10 million grant and this additional $19.5 million from the tech hubs.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, that's a really great point about how these things work, the byproducts.
Yeah.
And the things that are a tangible result of the process that maybe wasn't intended but can be capitalized on. I love that.
Yeah.
Can we just jump back to your career path for a minute?
Yeah.
And then, I think we want to get to the work you're doing now. I listened to that story, and it clearly wasn't a plan. There were a couple of pivots in there.
A couple. Yeah.
How would you describe sort of your approach to your career path for somebody who's thinking they need a plan or they don't have a plan? How did you approach it?
So there were definitely times when I was like, okay, I am in control of my journey. And then there were other times where I was like, okay, I'm not in control of my journey. And I'll be totally honest with you guys and all the listeners.
And all our listeners.
When I decided to explore entrepreneurship, that was after I was working for a company that relied heavily on federal federal projects because it was a heavy highway civil engineering company. And then the economy tanked. This was during Obama's 2010. So was that his first term? I think. Yeah, so his first term. And I got laid off. I mean, I thought I was in a pretty good position, but I had a 2-year-old at the time. And I was like, you know what? I can no longer have just one source of income again. So this is the honesty part. I did look for other jobs. I was not a great employee because I had made the decision, I will never have just one source of income again. I needed to figure out what were the other skill set that I could have that could provide passive income, or I could look at the path of entrepreneurship that would allow me to have those dual sources of income. Right. Yeah, because like becoming a parent obviously shifts your frame. Like it's no longer just me. I can't take the risks that I could have taken before.
And it's interesting, that's not the first time that's been said on this podcast, I guess.
Okay, well, yeah.
Not a great employee.
A common theme.
Yeah. So, I mean, I had 2 other jobs after that. But yeah, in the back of my mind, it was just sort of like, I need something different. So when that call came in 2014 for Startup Quest, it was different. So going back to your question of it was not an unusual path. I think the one thing that I think was consistent was being intentional and being true to myself. And then I remember, I don't know if it was something that I read or a podcast or something that I listened to, but it was always just, how do you want to show up in the world? And at that time, it might have been called your personal brand, but it was just, how do you want to show up? And when you do show up, how do you want people to recognize you, remember you, et cetera? And I think I just became really intentional about that.
That's really good.
Yeah.
So you're showing up now in a big way with Miami Tech Works. So let's do our own pivot and talk about your work there, because you're doing some dynamic work there. Talk about what you're doing, the organization, what has been accomplished so far, and what are your thoughts about next steps with Miami Tech Works?
Yeah. So like I said, November 2022, the opportunity came to oversee $10 million in funding and distribute that to the South Florida region. And even though the name says Miami Tech Works, just know that this funding is available for Broward and Miami-Dade County
I was going to ask you, Terry, you're forgetting us folks here in Broward now? You're moving on? And
No, I'm actually a Broward resident, so there's no way that I could forget Broward. And I'll give you an idea of how these funds are being spent. So overall purpose is, let's talk to employers. Let's identify what are the critical job needs when it comes to tech talent. And let's also make sure that academic institutions, training providers, anyone that is preparing tech talent understands those job needs and can align their programs. But most importantly, let's make sure that they're good quality jobs at the end of the training program. And then also, let's make sure that if we have participants that are in those programs, that we're removing any barriers to success. About 54% of all South Florida residents, they're not born here. So we've got language barriers, we've got learning barriers, we've got transportation barriers. If anybody has ever been on our roadways at 8 o'clock in the morning, it can take you an hour and 45 minutes to 2 hours to get from Broward to
30 miles,
Miami.
right.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. So this $10 million is distributed between Miami-Dade College, Florida International University, Florida Memorial University, OIC of South Florida, which is a nonprofit training, a nonprofit training center. And then we've incorporated some of our tech boot camps that typically work with people going from non-technical backgrounds that want to explore technology. The most impactful way this money is being spent is in that barrier to completion element. So where we've spent the most money is in career prep, is in infrastructure, wraparound supports, laptops, gas cards to make sure that if somebody gets an internship, they can get to that internship successfully. So while I can't use the funds to pay for an internship for an employer, and I recognize that we have a lot of small businesses that want to bring on early talent, that maybe have struggles with wages and can't pay those wages, I can fund and make sure that when you are ready for talent, that talent is highly skilled. They've got the technology stack that you need. A lot of our companies need, AWS or cybersecurity. That's where we're investing heavily in making sure that the students that are going through the programs have the tech stack upon graduation.
Those requirements, like, what's your time horizon for how you think about what you're planning and training people for? Because it feels like things are about to change dramatically. So how do you think about the change that's coming primarily due to tech and AI? And are the companies you're talking to there yet in understanding how it's going to impact their business and who they're going to need?
Yeah. I would say that we are at a pivotal point where the two things have to be in parallel together. And we're talking to some companies that know that they need to implement AI, but they don't necessarily have a great AI policy yet, and they don't necessarily know how AI will impact their business. And we're moving beyond AI's productivity, right? So I think that was the first thing is like, oh, AI is going to help you be more efficient, be more productive. But now businesses want to know, where is the profit and bottom line, and how is AI going to make me more money? So it's not just about, oh, I want my employees to be efficient. I want to know, how can my employees build this agentic AI solution that's going to help my bottom line? And so we're at a critical point where the two things can happen simultaneously, the training and the employers implementing AI need to happen together because there's constantly AI tools and products coming on the market.
Every 3 or 4 months, it seems like. Yeah.
And then you've got the businesses that are like, okay, well, what am I using now? And then you've got the students that are like, okay, but this is what we're learning in the classroom from theory. And the only way that you can connect theory to application is real world solutions, like real world problems. And so where we try to implement things is employers, let's co-design together. Let's work on challenges together. Let's get real world solution or real world problems with the students right now so that they can do these sprints. It's really low risk because if the business is like, okay, let's just try this out, and then if it works, we'll implement it into the organization. And then you're working with talent that this new generation, their technology agility is a lot faster than a lot of incumbent workers right now. Yeah.
Right.
So you see good promise then with the youth.
Absolutely.
That it's if the adaptation is there, if they embrace it, and if they choose to do that, and that's always the question. Like, are you going to choose to do it, or are you going to choose to sit on the couch and do TikTok? And that seems like it seems like if you want to talk about bifurcation, it's like you're going to do one or the other, and it's how do we move that group into adaptation and adoption, changing the behaviors. And so what you're seeing seems quite promising that the youth are not only adopting the tech, they're really interested, they're rolling up their sleeves, and they're utilizing it.
Yeah, they just need a chance. So we've done a couple of things. One of the things that we love to do is demonstrations, showcases of our talent. One of our big things is we want to dispel the myth that there's no tech talent here in South Florida. We also want to dispel the myth that employers are saying, well, I can't find talent, or that there's a lack of trust in hiring early talent. Understanding that sometimes employers feel that it's a heavy lift for them, that they may have to do a lot of training, a lot of onboarding, and they may not have the infrastructure to do it. So the more that we can maybe stack these projects and these work-based experiences while the students are still in the program, by the time they graduate, they'll hopefully have close to a year and a half or two of the of the work-based situations before they even get onto the job site. So just last week before, we completed a project with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation called EPIC, Employer Provided Innovation Challenge. We had 4 startups, all working in AI, all in various stages, some that were already in their MVP stage, some that were already at profit stage. But they gave students real-world situations to work on, doing machine learning, large language models, even agentic voice commands. And all the students came back and said, number one thing that they learned was the ability to work on a team. They challenged themselves working with AI, some tools that they had never used before. One student got hired. I heard yesterday that one student got hired by the startup.
Terrific news story.
Yeah, that's a
Great.
great story. But it also gives the students the confidence to feel that the skills that they're learning can actually be applied in a real-world situation. And then we also had another demonstration where there's a student who's comes from Peru. His mom, I think, is a doctor. I forget what his dad does, but he's already thinking of entrepreneurial use cases for AI tools that he wants to build. So we could also be in a situation where these students are not even thinking about going into a company. Like they're already thinking about use cases for AI that can venture into entrepreneurship.
To build their own businesses.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
Are you seeing a demand anywhere that you're worried you can't meet? Like, where is the demand coming from? Workplace, students, workforce?
Yeah. I would say the next shift or focus is the cybersecurity clearance. So I always say that we can't talk about AI without talking about data and without talking about cybersecurity.
Okay.
Because a good AI governance policy includes all of that. If your company doesn't understand where your data is, what your data is, and how do you want to sandbox that data within the AI policy so that you're not exposing your company to any risk, then you also need to ensure that you've got a really strong cybersecurity policy that your company and all your employees also understand. How do you ensure that your employees understand how to protect that data, understand how to identify cybersecurity risks, especially as bad actors will utilize AI to try to get into your company. And so it's almost as though as AI becomes a foundational skill that everyone will need to know, same thing with cybersecurity.
Right.
Cybersecurity will need to become a foundational skill that everyone will need to know from a technical and a non-technical user. And then on the technical side, we will need to have more cybersecurity analysts, SOC analysts that also have greater security clearance. Even if they're not working for a government entity, they may need that level of security clearance as our personal data is the most valuable asset that we have. And we know that by all of the breaches that constantly happen, right?
And so there might not be governance, but customers, clients are requiring this. Before, if I'm going to give you my data. I need to see what policies and protocols you have in place to secure the lockbox
Absolutely.
there.
Yeah, you should know this better than
A little bit,
anybody
a couple
else.
things,
Yeah, exactly.
I sense a little bit of a sounding the alarm there. I mean, do you feel like this is something urgent that is not being given the proper attention that it needs, or something we all should be thinking about more?
Yeah, I definitely think that as I talk with the training providers, we're going to be looking at ways that we can help our cybersecurity students pass the certification exam for clearance. So yeah, it is a bit of sounding the alarm that it's not just enough to have them complete the program. We have to make sure that we're putting them in the best position to get that security clearance.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I like the way how you phrased it, sort of sounding the alarm. So, what would you propose? I mean, because, I've got a 9-year-old, a 6-year-old. I'm scratching my head these days as I'm sort of thinking, I want them obviously to grow their own wings and figure themselves out, but I also want to be able to kind of, funnel them through an area where I think the opportunities might come and where they can blossom. So, as you're seeing it right now in youth that's older, those are areas right now that you would recommend, suggest that AI, cybersecurity, agentic AI, those are obviously strong areas, at least within the next several years to come, the next decade. That would be an area of great focus and attention.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have a 16-year-old who's seen me grow up in tech, and I still have to encourage her, please take this AI class.
Yeah.
Please take this AI class. I want you to understand how to use it ethically, and how to be able to identify if there are bad actors on your social media site that are maybe encouraging, teens to do something that they shouldn't be doing, et cetera. So even from my older kid perspective, I still think that there's more that we could be doing. And in terms of sounding the alarm, I would say if there's anybody from like the public school system listening, yeah, it's time that we start to think about at least exposing students to AI in a way that they're aware of the use cases and how they could be more, I don't want to use the word, how students could be more aware of AI and not think of it as a punitive thing where it's like, oh, they're going to use it to cheat. No, but they could also use it in different ways to help prepare them for the workforce. So that's what I would think of. But I do want to also say that, and this is just my opinion, this is not, I do think that we have to begin to incorporate the humanities at a very early age as we prepare them for use in AI. And by that, I think about classes or elements of classes like philosophy, theology, ethics, and Socratic questioning.
Sure.
In the VMT, as we're mentoring, we use the Socratic method of questioning to help our mentees just think about a problem and think its way through. I think if we apply that to teaching kids how to do prompting and how to do questioning, then you won't necessarily interact with things like ChatGPT in a way that you're just asking questions and not getting and not being thoughtful and critical about the answers that you're getting.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so loaded.
These are the things I talk about every day. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, these are the things that are affecting us. I think,
Yeah.
it feels like one of the biggest problems is that people don't understand what's possible with AI, what it can do for others, and you mentioned bad actors, and what it can do for us, and the implications. But what I was really going to ask is the next question is, how do you stay ahead in terms of your own knowledge? Who do you read? Who do you follow? Who's doing the best work in this space that helps you in your role?
Oh, goodness. So in terms of workforce development, Jobs for the Future is an organization that I stay very closely aligned to. Harvard has a project on workforce that I also stay very aligned to. In terms of data, I have access to Lightcast, so I do track a lot of Lightcast data quite a bit, and I run a lot of reports just to see how we're doing.
Tell us what Lightcast does.
Okay. So Lightcast is labor market data, and I can run regional and national data reports on companies, jobs, occupation codes, programs. So even if I wanted to see how locally some of our programs are doing at the training providers, I can track and see, hey, is this a program that if employers are asking for it, but we've got low completion rates, low graduation rates, then there's a mismatch here. We've got to figure out, is a bachelor's degree still valid, or do we need to reshift that and maybe talk about certifications, talk about associate's degrees? What exactly do employers want? So Lightcast is basically my bread and butter. Just an interesting note on Lightcast. I just ran a report not too long ago comparing the first 6 months of 2024 and the first 6 months of 2025 in terms of jobs in the top 15 technology jobs. The number of job postings didn't really change that much. It was still around like 11,500 jobs. What did change is in 2025, artificial intelligence appears as a skill, whereas in 2024 it did not.
Right.
So now...
We're right in that moment.
Right in that moment.
Yeah.
So about 24% of the jobs in 2025, artificial intelligence was appearing as a required skill.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
You're at an incredible intersection, with in workforce development, in part academia, job creation, and so forth. Yeah, we started the podcast in a way we mentioned a call to action, a 911 here. I mean, if you could telegraph to academia right now, our school systems, I mean, what would you share with them with some of the things that you're seeing and witnessing right now?
Yeah. I would say if there's anything that needs to be done is collaborate with your industry partners, collaborate with your employers. Most academic institutions, public school systems already have employers engaged, from whether they're on the board or advisory committee, et cetera. Leverage that to have better, thoughtful conversations and have more calls to action on what are they doing in their companies, how are they innovating, and how can that translate into the classroom. We have employers, and you had mentioned this earlier, but we have employers that are doing innovation sprints internally that they aren't necessarily ready to announce yet. But if they can just give some insight to our training providers and to our public school system, they don't have to share, I understand IP, I understand NDAs and all that sort of stuff, but they have to give some sort of insight that can guide curriculum so that we can be ready. And I'll share some more data from Lightcast in that we are losing young people out of this region faster than any other. 45 and older, we're getting them. That's not
and
a
you
big
say the
deal.
region, you talk about the South Florida Peninsula.
Yeah,
Okay.
so we're looking at Palm Beach down to Monroe. But 15 to 20-year-olds, 20 to 24-year-olds, and even middle managers, 30 to 34-year-olds. I think the latest, census is also another data set that I look at. The outbound migration shows that those are the age groups that are leaving, are younger people. And so if we don't have talent pipelines and workforce pipelines that working with companies that are like, okay, great. If you have, 60-year-olds in your organization and they leave, you've got no backup that are filling those roles. And, yes, you can get away with paying young people less, but I don't know how much you can pay a bunch of 45, 50-year-olds that have families, et cetera. So that would be the call to action, is for employers to really engage thoughtfully and think about their talent pipeline strategy.
Do we know the reasons that we're losing?
So the other data shows that they're leaving to Port St. Lucie, Orlando, Tampa, and Atlanta. So when you look at migration data, that's where they're moving to.
What's there?
Apparently lower cost of living.
Affordable housing, from my
Affordable
understanding.
housing.
Yeah.
But we also have students that are highly qualified and getting internships outside of Florida. We don't have a lot of those internships opportunities here. Miami-Dade College had an intern go work in NVIDIA in California this summer.
Wow.
All expenses paid, by the way.
Wow.
I know. Really excited
Fantastic.
to hear.
They've got the budget for it.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So Miami Tech Works, obviously, what's the next step for Miami Tech Works and your role there?
So really exciting. Our grant, it's a grant-funded initiative. Our KPIs were 1,000 trained, 500 placed in jobs by September 2025. We've definitely met the 1,000 trained. We're right around 470 placed in
Fantastic.
jobs. Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And so we've actually been extended through another year, and that gives us an opportunity where the EDA has said, okay, now let's see what you can do for this next year. So we're going to continue to support the participants that are going through the programs that we've identified, cybersecurity, software engineering, et cetera. But we're also going to start taking a look at, because AI is so critical, how can we upskill employees within organizations? So we recognize that is also going to be at a critical point as well. Employees need to be upskilled in AI. So we're looking at opening up scholarships to upskill incumbent employees. As long as their employer says they're in good standing, they nominate them for the program, and the programs will be held at Miami-Dade College.
Well, we're very fortunate to have you in this role and your continuing support for all the areas that we talked about in workforce development and helping support academia, our youth in so many areas. And how do our listeners that are interested in getting a hold of you or participating in some capacity with Miami Tech Works, how do they reach you?
Yeah. First, I would say our website, miamitechworks.org. We're also on LinkedIn, Miami Tech Works. We're on Instagram at Miami Tech Works. We have a Luma page for all of our events, Miami Tech Works. We do run in-person meetings where we host a Tech Talent Coalition. This is for employers, community, talent, anyone that's interested in hearing what we might have going on, and just keeping the momentum going around workforce development. So we do that every other month, and our next one will be October 1st at FIU, and that one is actually going to be focused on GovTech and how students can land jobs working with government agencies, whether it's local, federal. So we're really excited to host that.
Excellent.
Well, that sounds exciting, and it will certainly mark our calendars for that. And thanks so much for being on the podcast today. Thanks for taking out the time. Terri-Ann Brown, who is director for Miami Tech Works, thanks for being on the podcast today.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Remember to subscribe, like, and share the Center Live podcast and follow us on all social media. If you're interested in sponsoring or appearing on the podcast, please email Levan Center Live. Our email is innovation@nova.edu.